attached to the Homeless Legal Prevention Project of Legal Aid Society. And I'm here today to discuss with you the issue of how does an eviction affect your credit and rental history? So the CDC has since taken steps to establish a nationwide eviction ban through October of 2021. However, these measures aren't permanent, and as the pandemic wears on and the end of these holds draw near, millions of Americans could find themselves suddenly at risk for eviction. If you're worried about being evicted, you're likely wondering how the process could impact your credit scores and rental history. Let's dive into this a bit and see what you can do if it happens to you. Here's what you need to know about eviction and credit and rental history and your chances of getting another rental in this case. First, let's have a preliminary understanding of a couple of key concepts. So what is an eviction? An eviction is a legal process that landlords may use to remove a renter from property. Evictions typically occur when a renter fails to pay some of their rent, but a landlord can just evict a renter for no reason. Can't just evict a renter for no reason. Instead, your lease or rental contract will outline the specific reasons that a landlord may evict a renter. These include things such as failure to pay rent or repeated late payments, using a property for illegal activities, subleasing a unit without permission from the landlord, or behavior that severely disrupts other tenants or neighbors. What is an eviction notice? An eviction notice must state that the tenant has 3 days to either pay rent or move out of the rental unit, or the landlord will terminate the tenancy. If the tenant does not pay rent or move, then the landlord can file an eviction lawsuit at the end of 3 days. A landlord needs to provide written notice of eviction before they can legally evict a renter. If you receive a notice of eviction, you have a few choices about what to do next. 1, you may move out as instructed. 2, you may negotiate with your landlord and agree to fix the problem to their satisfaction. For example, you might pay back rent owed in installment payments. Or 3, you may contest the eviction in court. Your chances of winning in court depend in part on the reason you were evicted and your local Florida laws. Next, it's important to understand what your credit score is in order to understand the impact of an eviction on it. Your credit score, a number ranging between 300 and 850, summarizes your credit worthiness, and the higher it is, the better. It is calculated based on your credit history and takes into account things like your overall level of debt, your history of repayment, how many accounts you currently have open, and other factors. Your credit score matters because many landlords or property management companies will run a credit and background check on prospective renters before agreeing to sign a lease. If your credit score is too low, a potential landlord may worry that you won't be able to pay your rent in a timely manner. Then there is the issue of what is a background check, specifically a rental background check. So most landlords have agreements with software providers so that they can easily pull and access all of your pertinent information to decide whether or not to approve you as a tenant. These programs allow landlords to quickly and easily pull reports with permissible use of course, which thereby allows a fast analysis and a quick decision on whether or not you have a feature in their apartment complex. So then the issue becomes, how does an eviction affect my credit history? If you fail to pay what you owe and your account is sent to collections, the collection action will show up on your credit report. That negative mark can damage your credit standing, and it can stay on your credit report for 7 years. Because your credit score is based on the information in your credit reports, you might suffer some score damage. Evictions aren't included on your credit report, and neither are certain types of public records, such as eviction judgments. However, that doesn't mean an eviction leaves your credit squeaky clean or that potential future landlords won't know about your eviction history. First, collection accounts or debts leading up to your eviction do appear on your credit report. If the landlord turned uncollected rents over to a collection agency at any point, that can also negatively impact your score. And if you fell behind on rent and tried to right the situation with a personal loan that you also fell behind on, for example, that could also hurt your credit score. Do evictions show up on rental background checks? The answer is yes. And in order to determine tenant liability, the vast majority of landlords these days pull rental background checks on new applicants. Evictions show up on rental background checks. Judgments related to evictions are a matter of public record. Future landlords might not see them on your credit report, but they can easily find them by searching court records. Many landlords use tenant screening services that provide rental backgrounds on prospective tenants, and court records related to evictions are typically included. In most states, including Florida, evictions stay on your record for up to 7 years. Following this time frame, they're deleted from public record. Is it possible to get an eviction removed from my record? Possibly. The answer to this is just to, I would say the easy answer rather to this is just to wait out the 7 years and let it lapse from your rental history and credit report. However, that's hardly practical. In some states, you can file an expungement to remove the eviction from your records. An eviction expungement is a process whereby the judge seals your eviction record. Once your record is expunged, no one will be able to access it. The court may expunge your case if it finds it is in the interest of justice and there's no need for landlords to know about your prior eviction. Here at Legal Aid Society of Palm Beach County, we have launched a Clean Slate initiative, which is a project that provides legal representation to families by seeking expungement of eviction records when special compelling circumstances show that expungement will remove identifiable barriers to rehousing. Please contact Legal Aid Society of Palm Beach County for further details. So how will an eviction affect a future apartment assessed? This too depends, as an eviction is a major red flag for landlords when it comes to you as a tenant. So in a nutshell, you can likely expect a fair amount of skepticism at best from potential landlords if you're on a new apartment search. Here are a couple of, or rather a list of handful tips that you can take to combat an imperfect rental history. You can check your own reports first. A handful of screening companies provide the bulk of tenant reports. Get your own free copy and check it for errors before applying for a home. If you know the building you want to live in, call and ask which specific tenant screening company they use. If you find an error, dispute it as soon as possible. You may have to wait 1 to 2 months until it's corrected, so give yourself plenty of lead time. Clean up your history. If you forgot to pay a late fee, thought your deposit covered your last month's rent, or damaged something in your previous rental that you didn't pay for, work it out with the landlord and ask that they expunge the ding from your tenant report. Keep a receipt of the transaction to prove you've paid your debt. Put your best foot forward. If you know there's undesirable information in your tenant screening report that you can't repair, make sure to explain the circumstances to the landlord before they get the report. Your transparency and extra documentation. For example, employer or landlord references, earning statements, history of on-time utility payments and cell phone payments, updated credit score, etc., might provide them with a more accurate reflection of who you are currently as opposed to the partial story a background report reveals. Ask to apply with a cosigner. A cosigner is legally on the hook to pay your rent should you not be able to. Landlords may see this as a good compromise if you have objectionable rental or credit history. You can ask that the cosigner be removed from the agreement once you make a predetermined number of on-time or early rental payments. Finally, put down a larger security deposit. Although it's not the easiest option, offering to pay 1.5 times or even double the requested security deposit may prove to a landlord that you are less of a financial risk than a tenant report shows.